A young archaeologist vanishes after touching a cursed red gem hidden in a serpent statue. She wakes in a gray city where the sun never rises. Hunted by masked cultists through crumbling ruins and underground tunnels, she's named the 13th Soul, key to an unholy ritual. A former priest rescues her, but smoke follows every step. Rooms breathe, eyes watch from the dark, visions distort reality. As ancient forces awaken beneath the last tower, escape is no longer the goal, survival is. I never planned to dig into the forbidden part of the shrine. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. Our team was ahead, charting the outer walls. I stayed behind to sketch. Or maybe I just wanted silence. The deeper we went into the ruins, the more the air felt aware. The shrine didn't belong in this world. No moss grew near it, no birds sang above it. It sat quiet beneath the cliffs of Azora, like something holding its breath. I walked through its throat, past cracked statues and weather-worn prayers etched into stone. I didn't know then I was being watched. At the center was a serpent with its mouth open, frozen mid-hiss. A red gem glinted between its fangs. I brushed it gently, just to see if it was real. I blinked, and the air folded inward like a sheet being snapped tight. Then everything vanished. I stood in a dead city. The sun was gone. The towers were skeletal, reaching up into a pale sky that refused to move. The wind didn't blow. The silence was complete, as if sound had never been invented here. I'm Aryan, 24, from a world where time still exists, but this was something else. A city locked in ash and stone, lit only by a breathless kind of twilight. A figure appeared between two broken columns. He wore a long black robe, his face hidden behind a smooth white mask, cracked like porcelain left in fire. Black dots ran down its sides like tears. I didn't run. I couldn't. His gaze held me in place. They call him Caliph, the whispering hand, the last mouth of the old gods. His followers came from the dark like insects, eyes veiled, voices low. They circled me, not with violence, with hunger. They believe I am the 13th soul, a vessel to awaken the one who sleeps beneath the city. But I was not alone. I was pulled away by another presence. A man cloaked in ash, his voice rough like broken stone. Joran, once a priest of the shrine, now a traitor. He saved me, but not out of kindness. He says if Caliph completes the rite, everything behind time will break through. We ran through catacombs slick with frost, rooms where the air shimmered with memory. Joran says this place remembers. It holds pain like a wound that never heals. He speaks little, but I see it in his eyes. He's seen too much. We found Ellen hiding among the broken bells, and Cain, a hunter who never sleeps. They don't know why they follow me, only that they must. We're bound now, chased by smoke that curls from the ceiling like fingers. The eye watches always. Sometimes it shows me visions, my own face, smiling in another time. A field of fire, a child crying beneath the shrine. I no longer trust what I see. Joran says we're close. The last tower stands above the resting place. Beneath it, a heart still beats. And if it wakes, none of us will remain what we are. I can feel it inside me now. A warmth that doesn't belong. A rhythm matching something buried. If I don't stop them, it won't be just this city that falls. It'll be the one I left behind. We didn't stop walking for hours. The corridors twisted and dropped, sometimes ending in stairways that led nowhere. I kept close to Joran, not because I trusted him, but because I had no other option. He didn't speak unless necessary. That silence made every sound louder. My boots scraping the stone, Ellen's breath, the echo of things we couldn't see. Cain walked behind us. He never asked questions, never looked tired. His eyes were always focused on the darkness ahead, like he expected it to move. I noticed how the shadows near him seemed thinner, as if they respected his presence. That gave me some comfort. I wanted to ask where we were heading, but I already knew the answer. The heart of the shrine, the last tower, the place none of them would say aloud. We stopped when the hallway split. Joran traced the symbols on the wall with his fingers, then turned left. The air changed. It felt old. Still, like something was sleeping and didn't want to be woken. Ellen reached for my hand. Hers was cold and trembling. She was younger than me, maybe 19, but her eyes held a strange calm, as if she'd seen this place before. A sudden creak echoed behind us. Cain turned without a word. A pale figure passed at the end of the corridor. It didn't look at us, just walked slowly until it vanished behind a crumbled arch. Joran motioned for us to move quickly. We didn't ask who it was. Every chamber we crossed seemed to remember something. A woman kneeling before an altar with nothing on it, dozens of shoes placed in a circle, a mural of a child with its face scratched out. I tried not to stare too long at anything. In one room, we found a pool. Still water, but no reflection. Cain tossed in a stone. The surface swallowed it without a ripple. Ellen whispered that this was the mirror well. She had only read of it in fragments. They said if you looked too long, it would show you a version of yourself that never left. Joran pressed forward. We passed under a stone gate marked with a sigil that made my skin prickle. Beyond it, the halls were different, narrower, more silent, no dust. It was as if time had stopped moving here. I touched the wall and felt warmth, something alive behind the stone. That's when the chanting began again. Distant, low. Calith's voice was among them. I felt it before I heard it. My chest tightened, my legs weakened. Joran placed a hand on my shoulder and told me to keep walking. I did, but I kept hearing my name, not shouted, breathed. We entered a chamber that looked untouched. Candles burned, though no one was near. At the center stood a statue, not of a god, but of a person. A woman. Her face looked like mine. I stepped back. Ellen whispered something I couldn't catch. Ken turned his back to the statue and stared at the walls. Carvings covered every surface, twisting lines, words in a language older than anything I knew. Joran said this was where the soul had last spoken, before it went silent for 2,000 years, and now, he said, it had started whispering again. I don't know what came over me, but I walked toward the statue. I needed to touch it. My hands moved on their own. The stone felt soft, almost warm. Behind me, Joran called out, his voice distant. The walls began to pulse, like veins under skin. Cain stepped forward and dragged me away. We ran. No one said anything. Just the sound of feet on stone. The chanting grew louder. The halls shook. I heard voices inside my head. Not words. Sounds of longing, grief, hunger. When we stopped, we were deeper. I didn't recognize the place. Joran said we had crossed into the inner breath, a part of the shrine where no light from the surface had ever touched. He warned us to speak only when necessary. Cain lit a small stone that glowed faintly blue. It lit our path just enough to see where we placed our feet. Ellen kept close. She was humming under her breath. Not a song, a rhythm. It seemed to calm the place. We rested inside a broken chamber. Carvings of stars and waves lined the ceiling. Joran watched the entrance. I lay back against the wall and closed my eyes. But I didn't sleep. The statue's face still burned in my memory. It wasn't just similar, it was exact. Same scar above the brow, same line at the chin. Something is happening to me. Something slow and quiet, like a memory trying to return. I used to sleep through anything, city noise, rain on metal roofs, even thunder. But here, in the depths of the shrine, silence feels louder than any storm. I drift off sometimes, but it's not sleep. It's more like slipping between things, between what was and what still wants to be. We left the chamber before sunrise, or what would have been sunrise, if this place had a sky that changed. Cain took the lead, holding that blue glowing stone in front like a fragile shield. Ellen walked beside him, humming again, slower this time. Her voice echoed back to us in odd ways, sometimes sharper, sometimes delayed. Joran moved behind me. His breathing was even. He never seems afraid, but I've caught him staring at the walls, lips moving silently. I don't ask what he says. I don't want to know if the walls answer. The halls narrowed again. We passed broken gates, some bent by heat, others by force. Strange plants grew from the cracks, thin, pale vines that pulsed gently. They leaned toward us as we passed. I stayed close to the center of the group. We reached a chamber filled with empty shelves. Dozens of clay tablets lay shattered on the floor. Ellen bent to pick one up but stopped. A symbol glowed faintly on its surface, then vanished. She stood without a word and didn't touch anything else. We moved on. At the next bend, we met someone, a man, tall, pale, dressed in robes like Joran's but cleaner, newer. His eyes were closed. He stood perfectly still. Cain froze. Joran stepped forward and said the name Kalar under his breath. The man opened his eyes. They were colorless. No white, no iris, just glass. He looked at each of us in turn, then stepped aside. No words, no movement beyond that. As we passed, I saw his hands. The fingers had markings carved into them, like he was once a page meant to be read. Ellen whispered he was a gate watcher, a protector of the final path. I didn't ask how she knew that. We descended again. The steps spiraled downward. The deeper we went, the heavier everything became. Our breaths, our thoughts, even the air. It pressed against us like water. My ears rang. Kane staggered once and grabbed the wall. Joran gave him a look. Not annoyed, concerned. The path ended at a door. Not stone, not wood, something else. Smooth, black, warm. I placed my palm on it and felt something pull, like the door had waited for me. It opened inward without a sound. Inside was a wide space, walls covered in cloth, symbols stitched in gold and silver thread. In the center, a pool of black water, still, quiet. Floating above it, a single light. Dim, steady. The air smelled like dust and honey. We didn't speak. The room didn't allow it. Joran approached the pool and knelt. Kane kept his distance. Elin looked to me. Her eyes were wide, uncertain. I stepped forward, drawn not by curiosity, but by familiarity. I had seen this place in dreams I didn't remember having. I stood at the edge of the pool. The surface showed no reflection, only depth. Something shifted beneath it. Not a shape, a feeling, a presence, not hostile, not kind, aware. The light above flickered. A faint hum passed through my chest. The stitching on the walls rippled slightly as if touched by wind, but there was no wind here. Then I heard it. A name, my name, spoken not aloud but inside, clear, gentle, ancient. I turned, expecting someone to be behind me. There was no one. Ellen stepped closer. She whispered that the shrine had recognized me, that something buried deep was reaching out. I didn't move, I just listened. The pool shifted again. A ripple, a faint glow from its center. Joran told us not to touch it, not to step in, but he said it too late. The light from above fell slowly like a drop of silk. It touched the surface. The pool went dark, then silent, and then the cloth on the walls began to burn from the edges inward, without flame, without smoke. We ran. Outside the chamber, the walls had changed. Carvings new, words that hadn't been there before. The shrine had changed, and so had we. Something had woken, and I think it followed us out. The air changed after we left the chamber. It wasn't colder, just sharper, like something had been stirred that wanted to settle again. We moved quickly, but not in panic. It was more like our feet knew where to go before we did. Kane kept glancing back. He said nothing, but I could tell his pace had shifted. Ellen walked close to me, clutching a pendant I hadn't noticed before. It looked like obsidian, smooth and oval, threaded with thin silver wire. I asked where she got it. She said her sister gave it to her before they took her away. Joran led us through a narrow passage lined with old carvings. Unlike the others, these weren't etched, they were raised, like they had grown out of the wall over time. Figures bent in strange poses, eyes with too many pupils, a tree with no leaves but dozens of mouths on its branches. We entered a room with no ceiling. Above us, only darkness, no stars, no sky, just stillness. At the center stood a small column, and on it a bowl filled with sand. Joran circled it carefully. He explained this was the room of last offering. No one had stepped inside it in centuries. The bowl never emptied, and the sand never changed. Kane touched the rim. His hand froze, then jerked back. His expression didn't change, but he took 2 steps away without a word. Ellen said she heard voices from it, soft and layered, not loud enough to understand, just enough to confuse. We moved on. The walls closed in tighter. The light from Kane's stone flickered for the first time. Joran pressed a new rune along the wall, and another path opened beside us. This one was smoother, almost polished. We heard footsteps, not echoes. Real, heavy footsteps ahead, then silence. We reached a crossroads. 2 paths, identical. Kane tilted his head and said the right one was wrong. Ellen agreed. I chose the left. No one argued. The new corridor felt warmer. The stones underfoot hummed faintly. We passed doors, actual wooden doors, shut tight and sealed with cloth bindings. None of us dared to touch them. One had a faint outline of a hand burned into it. It wasn't ours. We found a library, or what remained of it. Broken shelves, shattered lenses, scrolls scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. In the center sat a woman, pale dress, dark braid, face covered by a veil that shimmered faintly in the light. She didn't react to us. Joran addressed her by name, Valen. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were colorless, like ice that had never melted. She asked who I was. I told her. She stood without effort, her voice barely above a breath. She said the shrine had moved again, that the path behind us was now sealed. Valen agreed to guide us to the hollow chamber, not because she trusted us, but because something beneath the tower had stirred when the light touched the water. She said it wasn't the soul that woke, it was the gate around it. As we walked, Valen told us she had been here since before the doors first closed. She spoke of a ritual interrupted long ago, a 13th echo trapped between cycles. Joran asked her if she remembered who performed it. She looked at me and said, perhaps it was me. We passed an empty hall filled with wind but no source. It carried a scent like lavender and iron. Ellen covered her nose. Kine stopped walking. He said he'd seen this room before in a vision, but in his memory it had no walls, just endless steps rising upward. Valen led us through an arch etched with spirals. The stone flickered as we passed. I felt something pull at my ribs, like memory detaching from bone. Joran stumbled. Ellen let out a sound but caught herself. We emerged into a circular chamber. Quiet. Soft green light pulsed from the floor. At the center was a sphere suspended in air. Clear like glass, but inside it floated thousands of tiny threads, each gently turning. Valen said this was the Echo Heart. It held impressions of every thought, every choice, every failure ever made beneath the shrine. I moved closer. My reflection appeared in the sphere, but it blinked before I did. I couldn't look away from the sphere. The reflection blinked again, then tilted its head ever so slightly, but I hadn't moved. Can noticed. He stepped closer, not with alarm, just steady caution. His hand hovered near my shoulder, but he didn't touch me. Valen told us the Echo Heart doesn't lie. It doesn't show what you are. It shows what has nested inside you when you weren't paying attention. I kept staring, even though I didn't want to. Behind my own eyes in the glass, something else was watching back. Not hostile, not familiar, just awake. Joran suggested we leave the chamber. The longer we stayed, the more the sphere would recognize us, and when it knew us fully, it would remember everything we forgot. I wasn't sure what he meant, but Ellen was already backing away. The exit wasn't where we left it. The opening had shifted. Valen didn't seem surprised. She said the shrine doesn't move around us, we move inside it, and sometimes it decides to show us something new, or something we missed. We walked through a corridor none of us remembered passing earlier. The walls were smoother, the floors wet with something like condensation. A soft hum vibrated beneath our feet. I thought it was distant sound, but it matched the rhythm of my breath. We came into a long, narrow hall lined with mirrors. They weren't natural, flat, tall slabs of dark glass, unframed. We passed 5. No reflections. On the 6th, my image appeared, just me. No blink, no shift. But my hair was parted differently. I blinked, so did it. Joran told us to keep walking. Kane did. Ellen paused. She whispered something to her reflection. I didn't hear what. It whispered back. I pulled her gently. Her hand was cold, her expression unreadable. She walked silently beside me after that. The hall ended in a room that smelled like citrus and soil. A tree stood in the center, branches twisted and bare. From the ends hung silver pendants, hundreds of them, swaying without wind. Valen walked ahead and picked one gently. Inside was a name. She read it softly. No one reacted. She replaced it. Joran found a small stone bowl at the base of the tree. In it sat 4 drops of golden liquid, still and gleaming. He said it was called memory brine. If tasted, it gives back what you lost, but only if it belongs to this place. Kane declined. Ellen stepped forward. She touched the edge with her finger and placed 1 drop on her tongue. Her body went stiff. Then she closed her eyes and exhaled, as if something old had just been forgiven. When she opened her eyes again, she said a name we didn't recognize, Mirael, then nothing more. The shrine seemed quieter after that, not peaceful, just observant. We walked toward the eastern corridor. Valen said it would take us to the threshold chamber, the final veil, where the soul was never meant to wake. As we walked, I began hearing faint whispers in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood. They weren't words exactly, more like questions carved into sound. Kane placed a hand to the wall and said he felt warmth on the other side. I felt it too. Not heat. Attention. Joran stopped and turned to us. He said something simple but heavy, that once we saw what was beyond the veil, we couldn't return unchanged. That even forgetting would not protect us after that. I believed him, but I kept walking. The chamber was round and unlit. The walls pulsed faintly, like breath. In the center was a shallow bowl carved from crystal. Above it hovered a small, flickering light. Valen stopped near the edge and knelt. She spoke no words. I stepped closer. Inside the bowl was nothing, but when I reached out, it filled slowly with liquid shadow. My hand hovered above it. The whispers returned, louder now. Not threatening, just waiting. I felt Joran behind me, Khan to my right, Ellen still silent. I touched the surface. No sound, just a ripple. Then I saw it. Not a face, not a memory. A place. The shrine, but empty, hollow, as if it had forgotten its own name. And then, quietly, I realized it wasn't showing me the future or the past. It was showing me what the shrine would become if we failed. It looked exactly like the world I came from. We stayed quiet as we left the chamber. None of us spoke about what we'd seen in the bowl. I didn't know how to explain the image of an empty shrine that felt more real than memory. Cain led the way, but he moved slower than usual, as if the walls were heavier. Elin walked beside me, glancing often at Valen, who still hadn't said a word since she knelt. Joran kept behind us. I could sense his thoughts like a tide beneath the silence. He wasn't just watching for danger, he was measuring something. Perhaps the cost. The corridors beyond grew wider. The air grew dry. A distant sound began to pulse through the stone, steady and slow, like breath. We entered a hallway shaped like a spine. The walls curved above us, lined with what looked like vertebrae made from stone and glass. Between each was a hanging lantern, all unlit. Still, the path glowed gently beneath our feet. The light didn't seem to come from anywhere. Halfway down, we met someone. A woman leaned against one of the arches, arms folded, eyes closed. Her hair was silver, tied back with wire. She wore armor made of woven crystal and fabric that shifted color with every step we took closer. Joran called her Tara, and her eyes opened. She studied each of us, pausing on me the longest. She asked if I'd touched the bowl. I said yes. She gave a short nod and turned. No questions, no warning. She walked ahead of us, guiding us without looking back. Valen said Tara once served as a voice between shrines before the echoes stopped. She knew the old paths by memory, but not all of them were safe anymore. Some had changed, others remembered being sealed for a reason. We passed beneath a gate carved into the shape of two hands meeting above. The moment we crossed, the air dropped. It felt still, but not empty, more like paused. Cain slowed his pace. Ellen stopped entirely. Her pendant had begun to vibrate faintly against her chest. Tara told us this part of the shrine had not heard sound in many years. Speaking aloud might wake things that preferred silence. We walked in soft steps, careful not to shift too much dust. Every wall bore inscriptions shaped like feathers, curling inward as if drawn toward a single source. We reached a chamber of steps. They spiraled downward, carved in reverse, as if they were growing from above instead of anchored below. Tara descended first. I followed. The steps didn't echo, even under pressure. It felt like walking through a dream that didn't want to be remembered. At the base, there was a single stone door, smooth, pale, empty of markings, no lock, no handle, just a breath of warmth against our faces. Joran touched the surface. It opened by folding inward. Behind it, a single room. No walls, just black space, stretching far beyond what any light should allow. A single platform hovered over nothing, held by columns that faded into mist. In the center, a bell. It looked ancient but perfect. No cracks, no dust. Tara warned us not to approach. The bell was called the moment. It could only ring once, and if it did, it would bring everything inside the shrine to the same breath. Past, future, hidden. All made visible, but only for a second. And sometimes, even that was too long. We stepped carefully across the bridge. The platform was quiet, the air thick with memory. I felt pressure behind my eyes, like dreams I hadn't lived were pushing forward. Ellen reached out to steady herself, but stopped short of the railing. Cain asked what we were supposed to find here. Joran said he wasn't sure, but something had led us to this place. And when the shrine led, it never did so by accident. I looked at the bell. My reflection stared back from its curve, but it looked older, tired, like it had seen everything already. Valen moved beside me. Her voice was soft. She said the bell had been rung once before, when the shrine first broke away from time, and whoever struck it last vanished. Not in death, just forgotten, unwritten, like a word never spoken. No one touched the bell. We stood there for a while, listening to the silence and wondering if it was listening back. Then Tara turned and told us it was time to leave. The veil had thinned, and something behind it was moving again. As we crossed the bridge back, a young archaeologist vanishes after touching a cursed red gem hidden in a serpent statue. She wakes in a gray city where the sun never rises. Hunted by masked cultists through crumbling ruins and underground tunnels, she's named the 13th Soul, key to an unholy ritual. A former priest rescues her, but smoke follows every step. Rooms breathe, eyes watch from the dark, visions distort reality. As ancient forces awaken beneath the last tower, escape is no longer the goal, survival is. I never planned to dig into the forbidden part of the shrine. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. Our team was ahead, charting the outer walls. I stayed behind to sketch. Or maybe I just wanted silence. The deeper we went into the ruins, the more the air felt aware. The shrine didn't belong in this world. No moss grew near it. No birds sang above it. It sat quiet beneath the cliffs of Azora, like something holding its breath. I walked through its throat, past cracked statues and weather-worn prayers etched into stone. I didn't know then I was being watched. At the center was a serpent with its mouth open, frozen mid-hiss. A red gem glinted between its fangs. I brushed it gently, just to see if it was real. I blinked, and the air folded inward like a sheet being snapped tight. Then everything vanished. I stood in a dead city. The sun was gone. The towers were skeletal, reaching up into a pale sky that refused to move. The wind didn't blow. The silence was complete, as if sound had never been invented here. I'm Arian, 24, from a world where time still exists, but this was something else. A city locked in ash and stone, lit only by a breathless kind of twilight. A figure appeared between two broken columns. He wore a long black robe, his face hidden behind a smooth white mask, cracked like porcelain left in fire. Black dots ran down its sides like tears. I didn't run. I couldn't. His gaze held me in place. They call him Caliph, the whispering hand, the last mouth of the old gods. His followers came from the dark like insects, eyes veiled, voices low. They circled me, not with violence, with hunger. They believe I am the 13th soul, a vessel to awaken the one who sleeps beneath the city. But I was not alone. I was pulled away by another presence. A man cloaked in ash, his voice rough like broken stone. Joran, once a priest of the shrine, now a traitor. He saved me, but not out of kindness. He says if Caliph completes the rite, everything behind time will break through. We ran through catacombs slick with frost, rooms where the air shimmered with memory. Joran says this place remembers. It holds pain like a wound that never heals. He speaks little, but I see it in his eyes. He's seen too much. We found Ellen hiding among the broken bells, and Cain, a hunter who never sleeps. They don't know why they follow me, only that they must. We're bound now, chased by smoke that curls from the ceiling like fingers. The eye watches always. Sometimes it shows me visions, my own face, smiling in another time, a field of fire, a child crying beneath the shrine. I no longer trust what I see. Joran says we're close. The last tower stands above the resting place. Beneath it, a heart still beats. And if it wakes, none of us will remain what we are. I can feel it inside me now. A warmth that doesn't belong. A rhythm matching something buried. If I don't stop them, it won't be just this city that falls. It'll be the one I left behind. We didn't stop walking for hours. The corridors twisted and dropped, sometimes ending in stairways that led nowhere. I kept close to Joran, not because I trusted him, but because I had no other option. He didn't speak unless necessary. That silence made every sound louder. My boots scraping the stone, Ellen's breath, the echo of things we couldn't see. Cain walked behind us. He never asked questions, never looked tired. His eyes were always focused on the darkness ahead, like he expected it to move. I noticed how the shadows near him seemed thinner, as if they respected his presence. That gave me some comfort. I wanted to ask where we were heading, but I already knew the answer. The heart of the shrine, the last tower, the place none of them would say aloud. We stopped when the hallway split. Joran traced the symbols on the wall with his fingers, then turned left. The air changed. It felt old, still, like something was sleeping and didn't want to be woken. Ellen reached for my hand. Hers was cold and trembling. She was younger than me, maybe 19, but her eyes held a strange calm, as if she'd seen this place before. A sudden creak echoed behind us. Cain turned without a word. A pale figure passed at the end of the corridor. It didn't look at us, just walked slowly until it vanished behind a crumbled arch. Joran motioned for us to move quickly. We didn't ask who it was. Every chamber we crossed seemed to remember something. A woman kneeling before an altar with nothing on it. dozens of shoes placed in a circle, a mural of a child with its face scratched out. I tried not to stare too long at anything. In one room, we found a pool. Still water, but no reflection. Cain tossed in a stone. The surface swallowed it without a ripple. Ellen whispered that this was the mirror well. She had only read of it in fragments. They said if you looked too long, it would show you a version of yourself that never left. Joran pressed forward. We passed under a stone gate marked with a sigil that made my skin prickle. Beyond it, the halls were different, narrower, more silent, no dust. It was as if time had stopped moving here. I touched the wall and felt warmth, something alive behind the stone. That's when the chanting began again. Distant, low. Calith's voice was among them. I felt it before I heard it. My chest tightened, my legs weakened. Joran placed a hand on my shoulder and told me to keep walking. I did, but I kept hearing my name, not shouted, breathed. We entered a chamber that looked untouched. Candles burned, though no one was near. At the center stood a statue, not of a god, but of a person. A woman. Her face looked like mine. I stepped back. Ellen whispered something I couldn't catch. Ken turned his back to the statue and stared at the walls. Carvings covered every surface, twisting lines, words in a language older than anything I knew. Joran said this was where the soul had last spoken, before it went silent for 2,000 years, and now, he said, it had started whispering again. I don't know what came over me, but I walked toward the statue. I needed to touch it. My hands moved on their own. The stone felt soft, almost warm. Behind me, Joran called out, his voice distant. The walls began to pulse, like veins under skin. Cain stepped forward and dragged me away. We ran. No one said anything. Just the sound of feet on stone. The chanting grew louder. The halls shook. I heard voices inside my head. Not words, sounds of longing, grief, hunger. When we stopped, we were deeper. I didn't recognize the place. Joran said we had crossed into the inner breath, a part of the shrine where no light from the surface had ever touched. He warned us to speak only when necessary. Cain lit a small stone that glowed faintly blue. It lit our path just enough to see where we placed our feet. Ellen kept close. She was humming under her breath. Not a song, a rhythm. It seemed to calm the place. We rested inside a broken chamber. Carvings of stars and waves lined the ceiling. Joran watched the entrance. I lay back against the wall and closed my eyes. But I didn't sleep. The statue's face still burned in my memory. It wasn't just similar, it was exact. Same scar above the brow, same line at the chin. Something is happening to me. Something slow and quiet, like a memory trying to return. I used to sleep through anything, city noise, rain on metal roofs, even thunder. But here, in the depths of the shrine, silence feels louder than any storm. I drift off sometimes, but it's not sleep. It's more like slipping between things, between what was and what still wants to be. We left the chamber before sunrise, or what would have been sunrise, if this place had a sky that changed. Cain took the lead, holding that blue glowing stone in front like a fragile shield. Ellen walked beside him, humming again, slower this time. Her voice echoed back to us in odd ways, sometimes sharper, sometimes delayed. Joran moved behind me. His breathing was even. He never seems afraid, but I've caught him staring at the walls, lips moving silently. I don't ask what he says. I don't want to know if the walls answer. The halls narrowed again. We passed broken gates, some bent by heat, others by force. Strange plants grew from the cracks, thin, pale vines that pulsed gently. They leaned toward us as we passed. I stayed close to the center of the group. We reached a chamber filled with empty shelves. Dozens of clay tablets lay shattered on the floor. Ellen bent to pick one up but stopped. A symbol glowed faintly on its surface, then vanished. She stood without a word and didn't touch anything else. We moved on. At the next bend, we met someone, a man, tall, pale, dressed in robes like Joran's but cleaner, newer. His eyes were closed. He stood perfectly still. Cain froze. Joran stepped forward and said the name Kalar under his breath. The man opened his eyes. They were colorless. No white, no iris, just glass. He looked at each of us in turn, then stepped aside. No words, no movement beyond that. As we passed, I saw his hands. The fingers had markings carved into them, like he was once a page meant to be read. Ellen whispered he was a gate watcher, a protector of the final path. I didn't ask how she knew that. We descended again. The steps spiraled downward. The deeper we went, the heavier everything became. Our breaths, our thoughts, even the air. It pressed against us like water. My ears rang. Kane staggered once and grabbed the wall. Joran gave him a look. Not annoyed, concerned. The path ended at a door. Not stone, not wood, something else. Smooth, black, warm. I placed my palm on it and felt something pull, like the door had waited for me. It opened inward without a sound. Inside was a wide space, walls covered in cloth, symbols stitched in gold and silver thread. In the center, a pool of black water, still, quiet. Floating above it, a single light. Dim, steady. The air smelled like dust and honey. We didn't speak. The room didn't allow it. Joran approached the pool and knelt. Kane kept his distance. Elin looked to me. Her eyes were wide, uncertain. I stepped forward, drawn not by curiosity, but by familiarity. I had seen this place in dreams I didn't remember having. I stood at the edge of the pool. The surface showed no reflection, only depth. Something shifted beneath it. Not a shape, a feeling, a presence, not hostile, not kind, aware. The light above flickered. A faint hum passed through my chest. The stitching on the walls rippled slightly as if touched by wind, but there was no wind here. Then I heard it. A name, my name, spoken not aloud but inside, clear, gentle, ancient. I turned, expecting someone to be behind me. There was no one. Ellen stepped closer. She whispered that the shrine had recognized me, that something buried deep was reaching out. I didn't move, I just listened. The pool shifted again. A ripple, a faint glow from its center. Joran told us not to touch it, not to step in, but he said it too late. The light from above fell slowly like a drop of silk. It touched the surface. The pool went dark, then silent, and then the cloth on the walls began to burn from the edges inward, without flame, without smoke. We ran. Outside the chamber, the walls had changed. Carvings new, words that hadn't been there before. The shrine had changed, and so had we. Something had woken, and I think it followed us out. The air changed after we left the chamber. It wasn't colder, just sharper, like something had been stirred that wanted to settle again. We moved quickly, but not in panic. It was more like our feet knew where to go before we did. Kane kept glancing back. He said nothing, but I could tell his pace had shifted. Ellen walked close to me, clutching a pendant I hadn't noticed before. It looked like obsidian, smooth and oval, threaded with thin silver wire. I asked where she got it. She said her sister gave it to her before they took her away. Joran led us through a narrow passage lined with old carvings. Unlike the others, these weren't etched, they were raised, like they had grown out of the wall over time. Figures bent in strange poses, eyes with too many pupils, a tree with no leaves but dozens of mouths on its branches. We entered a room with no ceiling. Above us, only darkness. No stars, no sky, just stillness. At the center stood a small column, and on it a bowl filled with sand. Joran circled it carefully. He explained this was the room of last offering. No one had stepped inside it in centuries. The bowl never emptied, and the sand never changed. Kane touched the rim. His hand froze, then jerked back. His expression didn't change, but he took 2 steps away without a word. Ellen said she heard voices from it, soft and layered, not loud enough to understand, just enough to confuse. We moved on. The walls closed in tighter. The light from Kane's stone flickered for the first time. Joran pressed a new rune along the wall, and another path opened beside us. This one was smoother, almost polished. We heard footsteps, not echoes. Real, heavy footsteps ahead, then silence. We reached a crossroads. 2 paths, identical. Kane tilted his head and said the right one was wrong. Ellen agreed. I chose the left. No one argued. The new corridor felt warmer. The stones underfoot hummed faintly. We passed doors, actual wooden doors, shut tight and sealed with cloth bindings. None of us dared to touch them. One had a faint outline of a hand burned into it. It wasn't ours. We found a library, or what remained of it. Broken shelves, shattered lenses, scrolls scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. In the center sat a woman, pale dress, dark braid, face covered by a veil that shimmered faintly in the light. She didn't react to us. Joran addressed her by name, Valen. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were colorless, like ice that had never melted. She asked who I was. I told her. She stood without effort, her voice barely above a breath. She said the shrine had moved again, that the path behind us was now sealed. Valen agreed to guide us to the hollow chamber. Not because she trusted us, but because something beneath the tower had stirred when the light touched the water. She said it wasn't the soul that woke, it was the gate around it. As we walked, Valen told us she had been here since before the doors first closed. She spoke of a ritual interrupted long ago, a 13th echo trapped between cycles. Joran asked her if she remembered who performed it. She looked at me and said, "Perhaps it was me." We passed an empty hall filled with wind but no source. It carried a scent like lavender and iron. Ellen covered her nose. Kine stopped walking. He said he'd seen this room before in a vision, but in his memory it had no walls, just endless steps rising upward. Valen led us through an arch etched with spirals. The stone flickered as we passed. I felt something pull at my ribs, like memory detaching from bone. Joran stumbled. Ellen let out a sound but caught herself. We emerged into a circular chamber. Quiet. Soft green light pulsed from the floor. At the center was a sphere suspended in air. Clear like glass, but inside it floated thousands of tiny threads, each gently turning. Valen said this was the Echo Heart. It held impressions of every thought, every choice, every failure ever made beneath the shrine. I moved closer. My reflection appeared in the sphere, but it blinked before I did. I couldn't look away from the sphere. The reflection blinked again, then tilted its head ever so slightly, but I hadn't moved. Can noticed. He stepped closer, not with alarm, just steady caution. His hand hovered near my shoulder, but he didn't touch me. Valen told us the Echo Heart doesn't lie. It doesn't show what you are. It shows what has nested inside you when you weren't paying attention. I kept staring, even though I didn't want to. Behind my own eyes in the glass, something else was watching back. Not hostile, not familiar, just awake. Joran suggested we leave the chamber. The longer we stayed, the more the sphere would recognize us, and when it knew us fully, it would remember everything we forgot. I wasn't sure what he meant, but Ellen was already backing away. The exit wasn't where we left it. The opening had shifted. Valen didn't seem surprised. She said the shrine doesn't move around us, we move inside it, and sometimes it decides to show us something new, or something we missed. We walked through a corridor none of us remembered passing earlier. The walls were smoother, the floors wet with something like condensation. A soft hum vibrated beneath our feet. I thought it was distant sound, but it matched the rhythm of my breath. We came into a long, narrow hall lined with mirrors. They weren't natural, flat, tall slabs of dark glass, unframed. We passed 5. No reflections. On the 6th, my image appeared, just me. No blink, no shift. But my hair was parted differently. I blinked, so did it. Joran told us to keep walking. Kane did. Ellen paused. She whispered something to her reflection. I didn't hear what. It whispered back. I pulled her gently. Her hand was cold, her expression unreadable. She walked silently beside me after that. The hall ended in a room that smelled like citrus and soil. A tree stood in the center, branches twisted and bare. From the ends hung silver pendants, hundreds of them, swaying without wind. Valen walked ahead and picked one gently. Inside was a name. She read it softly. No one reacted. She replaced it. Joran found a small stone bowl at the base of the tree. In it sat 4 drops of golden liquid, still and gleaming. He said it was called memory brine. If tasted, it gives back what you lost, but only if it belongs to this place. Kane declined. Ellen stepped forward. She touched the edge with her finger and placed 1 drop on her tongue. Her body went stiff. Then she closed her eyes and exhaled, as if something old had just been forgiven. When she opened her eyes again, she said a name we didn't recognize. Mirael. Then nothing more. The shrine seemed quieter after that. Not peaceful, just observant. We walked toward the eastern corridor. Valen said it would take us to the threshold chamber, the final veil, where the soul was never meant to wake. As we walked, I began hearing faint whispers in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood. They weren't words exactly, more like questions carved into sound. Kane placed a hand to the wall and said he felt warmth on the other side. I felt it too. Not heat. Attention. Joran stopped and turned to us. He said something simple but heavy, that once we saw what was beyond the veil, we couldn't return unchanged. That even forgetting would not protect us after that. I believed him, but I kept walking. The chamber was round and unlit. The walls pulsed faintly, like breath. In the center was a shallow bowl carved from crystal. Above it hovered a small, flickering light. Valen stopped near the edge and knelt. She spoke no words. I stepped closer. Inside the bowl was nothing, but when I reached out, it filled slowly with liquid shadow. My hand hovered above it. The whispers returned, louder now. Not threatening, just waiting. I felt Joran behind me, Khan to my right, Ellen still silent. I touched the surface. No sound, just a ripple. Then I saw it. Not a face, not a memory. A place. The shrine, but empty, hollow, as if it had forgotten its own name. And then, quietly, I realized it wasn't showing me the future or the past. It was showing me what the shrine would become if we failed. It looked exactly like the world I came from. We stayed quiet as we left the chamber. None of us spoke about what we'd seen in the bowl. I didn't know how to explain the image of an empty shrine that felt more real than memory. Cain led the way, but he moved slower than usual, as if the walls were heavier. Elin walked beside me, glancing often at Valen, who still hadn't said a word since she knelt. Joran kept behind us. I could sense his thoughts like a tide beneath the silence. He wasn't just watching for danger, he was measuring something. Perhaps the cost. The corridors beyond grew wider. The air grew dry. A distant sound began to pulse through the stone, steady and slow, like breath. We entered a hallway shaped like a spine. The walls curved above us, lined with what looked like vertebrae made from stone and glass. Between each was a hanging lantern, all unlit. Still, the path glowed gently beneath our feet. The light didn't seem to come from anywhere. Halfway down, we met someone. A woman leaned against one of the arches, arms folded, eyes closed. Her hair was silver, tied back with wire. She wore armor made of woven crystal and fabric that shifted color with every step we took closer. Joran called her Tara, and her eyes opened. She studied each of us, pausing on me the longest. She asked if I'd touched the bowl. I said yes. She gave a short nod and turned. No questions, no warning. She walked ahead of us, guiding us without looking back. Valen said Tara once served as a voice between shrines before the echoes stopped. She knew the old paths by memory, but not all of them were safe anymore. Some had changed. Others remembered being sealed for a reason. We passed beneath a gate carved into the shape of two hands meeting above. The moment we crossed, the air dropped. It felt still, but not empty, more like paused. Cain slowed his pace. Ellen stopped entirely. Her pendant had begun to vibrate faintly against her chest. Tara told us this part of the shrine had not heard sound in many years. Speaking aloud might wake things that preferred silence. We walked in soft steps, careful not to shift too much dust. Every wall bore inscriptions shaped like feathers, curling inward as if drawn toward a single source. We reached a chamber of steps. They spiraled downward, carved in reverse, as if they were growing from above instead of anchored below. Tara descended first. I followed. The steps didn't echo, even under pressure. It felt like walking through a dream that didn't want to be remembered. At the base, there was a single stone door, smooth, pale, empty of markings, no lock, no handle, just a breath of warmth against our faces. Joran touched the surface. It opened by folding inward. Behind it, a single room. No walls, just black space, stretching far beyond what any light should allow. A single platform hovered over nothing, held by columns that faded into mist. In the center, a bell. It looked ancient but perfect. No cracks, no dust. Tara warned us not to approach. The bell was called the moment. It could only ring once, and if it did, it would bring everything inside the shrine to the same breath. Past, future, hidden, all made visible, but only for a second. And sometimes, even that was too long. We stepped carefully across the bridge. The platform was quiet, the air thick with memory. I felt pressure behind my eyes, like dreams I hadn't lived were pushing forward. Ellen reached out to steady herself, but stopped short of the railing. Cain asked what we were supposed to find here. Joran said he wasn't sure, but something had led us to this place. And when the shrine led, it never did so by accident. I looked at the bell. My reflection stared back from its curve, but it looked older, tired, like it had seen everything already. Valen moved beside me. Her voice was soft. She said the bell had been rung once before, when the shrine first broke away from time, and whoever struck it last vanished. Not in death, just forgotten, unwritten, like a word never spoken. No one touched the bell. We stood there for a while, listening to the silence and wondering if it was listening back. Then Tara turned and told us it was time to leave. The veil had thinned, and something behind it was moving again. As we crossed the bridge back, I looked over my shoulder. The bell no longer showed my reflection. It showed something else.